Hello, my name is KT Ash, and today I want to talk to you about emotional and behavioral disorders in children. People today are experiencing the world in a way that we have never been able to experience before in history. Knowledge and information at the touch of a button, 24/7 round-the-clock news coverage on multiple television channels. People base the success of their lives on how others project themselves on social media. Movies, television, apps on phones and tablets, such as YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, have a grip on viewers, and even content creators garner the name of influencers. Children and young adults are typically the target audience for these influencers, which can create a domino effect for kids and teenagers to feel as though they don't measure up or are not as cool or edgy as the people they watch on a daily basis. For those kids and teenagers with their own mobile devices, especially ones who are not as supervised as they should be, the amount of content being fed to them has made it easy for those youth to be influenced and swayed into thinking and doing things they may otherwise would not do. That does not mean to excuse their behavior or put the blame solely on content creators or watching movies or consuming entertainment as a whole. The world is a hard place to navigate for near everyone. Children and adults with emotional and behavioral disorders are susceptible to the negative aspects of the world around them. Those with disorders have a more difficult road of controlling how they handle the world around them, more than those who are normal, heavy quotes around that. And so in this video, I want to talk about how EBDs look different for different people, how to spot people with EBDs, and how to react. The first thing we need to talk about is what exactly is an emotional and behavioral disorder, or EBD? According to the Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act, or IDEA, EBD is defined as, quote, a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to a marked degree that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Subsection A, an inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. B, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. C, inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. D, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. And E, a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. To highlight how common EBDs are in children, here are some statistics that may blow your mind. And this is reported from the CDC as recent as June of 2022. And this report is just for the United States. ADHD, anxiety problems, behavior problems, and depression are the most commonly diagnosed mental disorders in children. Estimates for ever having a diagnosis among children aged 3 to 17 years of age in 2016 to 2019 are as follows. Again, this is the United States. ADHD accounts for 9.8% of children in the United States. And that's approximately 6 million children. Anxiety is 9.4%, which is approximately 5.8 million. Behavior problems is 8.9%, which is approximately 5.5 million. And depression accounts for 4.4% of children, which is approximately 2.7 million children in the United States. Depression and anxiety have increased over time. Excuse me. Ever having been diagnosed with either anxiety or depression among children aged 6 to 17 years increased from 5.4% in 2003 to 8% in 2007 and to 8.4% in 2011 to 2012. Ever having been diagnosed with anxiety increased from 5.5% in 2007 to 6.4% in 2011 to 2012. Now here's where the numbers get a little crazy. For adolescents, depression, substance abuse, and suicide are important concerns. Of course they are. Among adolescents aged 12 to 17 years in 2018 to 2019, reporting on the past year, 15.1 had a major depressive episode. 36.7% had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. That means that approximately a third, actually over a third, of children in the United States had persistent, constant feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 4.1% had a substance use disorder. 1.6% had an alcohol use disorder. 3.2% had an illicit drug use disorder. 18.8% seriously considered attempted suicide. 15.7% made a suicide plan. 8.9% attempted suicide, and 2.5% made a suicide attempt requiring medical treatment. So if you think of that in terms of millions of children, those numbers are staggering. Mental, behavioral, and developmental disorders begin in early childhood. Get this. 1 in 6 U.S. children aged 2 to 8 years, which is 17.4%, had a diagnosed mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. Again, thinking of in terms of millions, that is crazy. That is a lot of numbers and percentages, but it boils down to this. EBDs are common, can happen to anyone of any social status or standings, and people with EBDs deserve care and assistance. Since the calamity that occurred in 2020 with COVID that is still ongoing, we can bet those numbers have only gone up due to the isolation of children and the inability to physically interact with others. Not to mention spending a substantial amount of time on devices, soaking in a gratuitous amount of media, negativity, gloom and doom news, hearing angry and frustrated people on the TV and radio that their parents or guardians are listening to try to understand what on earth is going on in the midst of confusion. On top of all that, households are not always stable, and children reflect what they see in the home. Neglect, abuse, lack of necessary resources, and hygienic products in the home all play a role in the psychological development of children. And they carry these memories and behaviors with them wherever they go. It is no wonder that children are developing the way they are, with so much around to get into their easily manipulated minds and stir up all kinds of things. Coupled with the stress and pressures to succeed in school and home and sports, and all other outside social surroundings, one takeaway from all of this is that anyone can suffer from EBDs. So, what are some types of emotional and behavioral disorders? To name a few, here are some in their broad titles. So not very specific, there are definitely subsections here, but here are some broad titles. Anxiety, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, conduct, oppositional defiant disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, and psychotic disorders, which is more on the extreme side of EBDs. So let's talk about a couple of these, starting with oppositional defiance disorder. Oppositional defiance disorder is described as extreme rebelliousness or non-compliance and a lack of willingness to follow directions or cooperate. Oppositional defiant disorder can be frustrating to deal with, especially with adolescents. Imagine being in a classroom filled with 25 second graders and trying to get them all to do an assignment involving teamwork. Then, out of the 25 second graders that you are trying to corral, there is a student who refuses to do any work and makes things difficult for the other classmates. When you go to talk to the student, they become stoic and continuously refuse to do what you're requesting, causing the other students to become frustrated and upset with the child. It is difficult to know what to do right off the cuff in a situation like this one, but it is too common a situation to avoid in a classroom setting. Now, imagine that the student is not a second grader, but appears to be a gloomy 16-year-old with an attitude problem. It seems easier in the moment to scold the child and ostracize them because they aren't doing what you want them to or are not cooperating with their fellow students. Scolding is not going to be the solution. But then what is the solution? We'll talk about that later on in the video. Conduct disorder is another type of behavioral disorder where things can easily and quickly escalate out of hand. This disorder is similar to oppositional defiant disorder, but the person can become aggressive and inflict violence on others, especially if they do not get their way. Simply refusing to cooperate is not enough to get their point across, and so they must be handled with patience and understanding. Anxiety is a common disorder and is misunderstood due to it being a regular part of life. There are points in life when everyone, no matter how stable they are, experiences moments of anxiety. Driving for the first time, asking a crush out on a date, interviewing for a job. Moments like these cause our hearts to beat faster and our minds to race and wander about negative things. Clinical anxiety is a different disorder where panic attacks can occur. Anxiety can trigger post-traumatic episodes, even when in a relaxed state. Worry and tension consume daily life and make it difficult to even function. Those are just a few of the emotional and behavioral disorders that affect people's lives every day. So what do we do when we have to interact with people with this disability? Patience and understanding go so far, but there has to be more. Lucky for us, there is more we can do for people who live with an EBD. For teachers, meeting with the school counselor regularly on behalf of the student goes a long way. Having a plan in the form of an IEP, keeping parents informed of how their child is doing, and differentiating the classroom are great starts for the student to get what they need right off the bat. That does not mean that there won't be difficult days. We have to be realistic. But establishing a relationship with the student helps build trust and confidence between teacher and student. It might also help the student to sit next to the classmate they feel comfortable around, as long as they are not disruptive, of course. While on the subject, have your established rules and guidelines and do not waver from them. Students will test what they can get away with in class, and if they see you are lenient on even little things, they will push and push until they get what they want, and that becomes the norm. If it seems as though the student is not improving, it is possible they need attention and treatment from a medical professional. However, that is not for us as teachers to diagnose. Repeat, do not try to diagnose a student. Keep records of everything and share your knowledge with your teammates, not in a gossipy manner, but for the sake of the child. Also, praise and encourage the student on the little things they accomplish. Cheering them on when they do something positive in class can only yield good results. I think ultimately that sums up what I learned in class this semester. People are going through all kinds of things. We as teachers and frankly human beings are going through a lot. I would hope that someone would extend the same care and grace to me if I was having a bad day. Caring for our kids in school and making sure they get the care and help they need should be a priority for us. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes those kids are going to drive you crazy. Sometimes their parents are going to drive you crazy. But that's where you work with your team. Your team is there to support you and help out those students who may be going through some serious things that we don't even know about. Ultimately, it's our duty as educators to advocate for these kids. And that is what I learned in Diverse Learners this semester. Thanks for watching.